Welcome back, everybody, to Bears Talk today. And what a great day it is to be a fan of the Chicago Bears. For those of you living under a rock, the Chicago Bears named Ben Johnson as their newest head coach, the former offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, who has led one of the most successful units in the NFL over the past couple of years. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to talk about in this episode, this emergency episode, if you will, of Bears Talk today. But I'm going to start with something that I think not a lot of people are talking about. Obviously, we're going to get into Ben Johnson. We're going to get into his staff, what this means for the Bears, what this means for Caleb Williams. But I wanted to start at the highest level of the Chicago Bears. I want to talk about George McCaskey, Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles. Specifically, though, George McCaskey, because I was there not even 2 months ago, against the Seattle Seahawks, where the fans were violently chanting, "Sell the team, sell the team, sell the team." And from that moment, the Bears beat the Packers in Lambeau Field, which is something they have never do, and then go out and they acquire Ben Johnson, one of the most coveted head coaches in the last several cycles, to be their guy. This feels like a real tide-turning moment for the Chicago Bears franchise. Not only from a perspective of now it seems like we got our guy, but for the first time in a long time, the Bears seem like a desirable job for coaches. This is a job that Ben Johnson wanted. Obviously, the Bears wanted Ben Johnson, but Ben Johnson chose the Chicago Bears. And on the other side of that, George McCaskey went out, paid the big bucks, paid the premium for a head coach, which is something that he's balked at the last couple of years. And, there was a report that said, George McCaskey wasn't totally comfortable with the money. He wasn't totally comfortable giving out this big deal multiple years and giving Ben Johnson all the control he wanted. And people will say that's a negative. And I kind of look at it differently. I say, well, he did it. Like, he got over it. He's a billionaire owner. He got over the fact that he had to write a big write a big check to get in Ben Johnson. And maybe this is the move that changes the Bears around. I said it a few weeks ago on this show. I said, listen, the Bears are in a bad spot right now. We are in the middle of like a 10-game losing streak. Everything looked bad. Caleb was having a bad year. The defense was regressing. Everything looked bad. And I said, listen, there is light at the end of the tunnel. This right here is the light. This is the light right here. The fact of you getting Ben Johnson. I cannot say how much of a good thing it is for the Bears. And for Kevin Warren, people were doubting him as well as the team president. The stadium thing's kind of stalling. There was a report last year that he, didn't want to bring in Jim Harbaugh for an interview. There's been a lot of negativity around him as well. Fact of the matter is, he led the charge to get Ben Johnson. I 100% guarantee he was a huge, huge part of the reason why the Bears were able to land Ben Johnson. For Ryan Poles as well, obviously, he was brought in a little bit before Matt Eberflus, but Matt Eberflus really wasn't his guy per se. He was just kind of his choice of a few options. Ben Johnson was clearly their number one target. As a team, the Chicago Bears worked together to recruit Ben Johnson. He wanted to come to Chicago, and George McCaskey wrote the check to get him there. That's something that I wasn't confident was going to happen, a few weeks ago. I didn't have a lot of doubt that the Bears were going to want Ben Johnson. I think if you have a working brain, you would want Ben Johnson as your head coach. My problem was I wondered if the Bears would not only be able to sell the Bears to Ben Johnson, but also then if Ben Johnson was interested, if McCaskey would write a big enough check. And again, my fear sounded like it almost came true, but we don't deal in almost, unfortunately. Fortunately, we don't deal in almost. So I'm very glad that the Bears front office was able to get this done. Now, let's talk about Ben Johnson. It's no exaggeration to say that Ben Johnson has been the best play caller, offense or defense, in the last several years in the NFL. The Detroit Lions offense ranks first or second in so many important statistical categories, including points per game. All right, they're second in rushing touchdowns per game. They're first in efficiency, right? They have been everything that the Chicago Bears have not been over the past several years. And while I will say, obviously the Lions have phenomenal players. Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Their offensive line is tremendous. People will say, well, he's not going to have those guys coming into the Bears. My counter argument to that would be, when he became the offensive coordinator, they didn't have those players. Not all of them anyways. They didn't, right? They had Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, and this was post-Rams Jared Goff when he was, like stuck on like gum on the side of the shoe, right? It was like nobody wanted Jared Goff. And he molded that team and that offense in his image to become an elite unit. I feel confident that he will do that for the Bears as well. One thing I do want to touch up on that I think is just a really funny point is that Ben Johnson, and this is exactly what people have been saying on Twitter, they sabotaged or that he wasn't fully prepared for the divisional game and that he cost the Lions a Super Bowl run. In what universe is 500 yards of offense and 31 points sabotaging? Like, I don't understand. Now, I understand a Lions fan being upset that you lost in the divisional round. Less than 48 hours later, your offensive coordinator is going to your division rival. I get it. But what did you want Ben Johnson to do? He didn't throw 4 interceptions actually, including Jameson Williams. He didn't fumble the football, right? He didn't throw a pick 6. So those are all things, contributing factors to why the Lions lost that game. I don't blame Ben Johnson for that, right? That's really not on him. If 31 points is a bad day, sign me up. I will take 31 points every game, okay? His defense, not that he runs the defense, but the defense couldn't stop Jaden Daniels to save their life. So the Lions losing in the divisional round was an extraordinarily great thing for the Chicago Bears. It allowed them to, the following day, complete the Rooney Rule, which, as you guys know, you have to interview multiple minority candidates for a position before you can fill a position. They interviewed Eddie George the next day, which I think we all knew was probably not a legit interview, but nevertheless, they interview Eddie George, and from there, everybody's saying, hey, things are going to move fast. Things are going to move quick. The Bears are going to be in on Ben Johnson. But the problem for the Bears, is that the Raiders were also in on Ben Johnson, and the Jaguars were also in on Ben Johnson. Now, I didn't think the Jaguars were a legitimate threat because they kept Trent Baalke, which I thought was a horrible move from the Jaguars. Horrible move. Trent Baalke is a clown. Like, he is not a successful general manager. He ran Jim Harbaugh out of town. He's run other guys out of town. Clearly, he, for some degree, prevented Ben Johnson from coming to Jacksonville. So that was a horrible move. So I thought Jacksonville was kind of out of the picture. It really came down to the Bears or the Raiders, in my opinion. And the interesting thing about the Raiders is that they have a guy, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of him. His name's Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady, it's no secret that he's kind of the head honcho over in Las Vegas right now. He is the one who's running things. He is going to be the guy in charge. He's going to be the overseer of the franchise. And it was, again, no secret that he was trying to lure in Ben Johnson. He was. I mean, he was, whining him and dining him and doing all of these things. And on top of that, Tom Brady called the divisional game in the broadcast booth for Fox. So he got to meet Ben Johnson in person, talk to him. And when that happened, I thought, oh, that's terrible for the Bears. That is not a good thing. I mean, meeting Tom Brady, he has to be just starstruck. He's got to be, overwhelmed. But good thing for the Bears is that clearly it didn't work. Clearly, Ben Johnson thought of the Bears job as their more desirable job than the Raiders. And why wouldn't he? The Raiders don't have a quarterback. They don't have a draft pick to get a quarterback, right? They have one star player on their team who's probably going to end up being traded in this offseason. This is a terrible roster. And on top of that, you have to play in the same division as the soon-to-be 3-time defending Kansas City Chiefs. Sorry, Bills fans. The Chargers with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh, who look way better. The Denver Broncos with Sean Payton and Bo Nix, who also made the playoffs and look way better. That division is tough, man. And, that's not to say the NFC North isn't tough. The NFC North is a very, very good division. I think we can all agree with that. But Ben Johnson this past season went 6-0 against the NFC North, okay? He knows how to play against Brian Flores. He knows how to play against the Green Bay Packers, right? He knows how to go against the Detroit Lions defense because he did it every day in practice. So I think knowing the NFC North and having that knowledge and that experience against the North is going to be huge for Ben Johnson. I think that was part of the reason why he felt comfortable taking the Bears job. On top of that, the real reason why he took the Bears job, and let's not kid ourselves, let's not act like it's anything else, is because of Caleb Williams. I think the perception of Caleb Williams around the league is that Caleb Williams is a tremendously talented quarterback. And obviously, right, he was the number 1 overall pick in last year's draft. Now, you look at Caleb Williams' rookie year, and obviously he did not have a great rookie year. I wouldn't call it bad by any means. I wouldn't call it great by any means. He had an okay rookie year, right? Made a lot of mistakes, showed a lot of potential. Obviously, when you just juxtapose that with what Jaden Daniels is doing right now, it looks a lot worse. I will say, I don't want to compare apples to apples when you're talking about rookie quarterback development. Some guys get it right out of the gate and they're great. Some guys, like Caleb Williams, need a little bit more time. I will say this as well, though. much better quarterbacks than Caleb Williams have had much worse rookie seasons, right? Peyton Manning in his rookie season was awful. He threw like 28 interceptions, okay? Josh Allen in his rookie season threw 52% completion percentage, right? Turns out Josh Allen is pretty good. Peyton Manning is a Hall of Famer, won multiple Super Bowls. So I am not losing 1 ounce of faith in Caleb Williams. I think he will be fine. And I think the best thing they could have done for his development was to get a guy who is such an offensive mastermind, such as Ben Johnson, right? This is the best possible outcome for Caleb Williams. He alluded to it on the St. Brown podcast a couple of weeks ago. You have Jaquan Brisker on Twitter talking about, hey, we want an offensive guy. As a defensive player, he's like, I want an offensive guy, because you get a defensive coach, you get a good offensive coordinator. That offensive coordinator is going to leave in a couple of years. The fact that the Bears were able to land a big fish like Ben Johnson, from a division rival, a guy who had led the best unit in the NFL, arguably, over the past several years. I mean, this is one of the best days being a Chicago Bears fan in my life. I would argue maybe the best. It is a new day in Chicago. It is a brand new day. So now that we've kind of explained how the Bears got Ben Johnson, I guess the successful top level of the Bears organization, what they did to get Ben Johnson. Caleb Williams is, of course, happy. The Bears fans are, of course, happy. The national media is praising the Bears. I mean, this is a win for the Chicago Bears. Like, make no bones about it. This is a tremendous win for the Chicago Bears. They had a day like this in April when they took Caleb Williams. They had a day like this a couple of weeks ago when they beat the Packers in Lambeau. But the Bears have not had a lot of days like they did yesterday in quite some time, right? It's been a lot more bad days than good days for the Chicago Bears. And I think now that they have Ben Johnson, I think we are on the other side of the tunnel, right? We're seeing the good days come to fruition. There's about to be a new era of Chicago Bears football. And I'm very excited. And I'll say something really quick before I move on. People are saying, well, he's never been a head coach and there's a chance he flames out. Of course, with every coach, there's risk that, he doesn't work, he doesn't fit, he doesn't do whatever. I'll say this, though. Even if Ben Johnson flames out and is just, a bust of a head coach and the Bears don't win nothing with him and et cetera, this is still a tremendous win because the Bears went out and got the guy that everybody wanted. They took him away from Tom Brady, okay? Tom Brady. This is like in high school or in college when you got the really pretty girl and every guy kind of wants to date her, but she chooses you. She chooses you, and it's the best feeling on earth. And Bears fans understandably are jumping for joy, me as well. My poor girlfriend had to hear me talk her ear off about it yesterday. I just couldn't shut up. But moving on to Ben Johnson. What is he going to do? How is he going to fix the Bears? What's his plan? We heard in the weeks, preceding this, or weeks before this search, we heard the little reports that agents drop, right? It's not so subtle about what he is going to want in a potential job, what he was going to do. And one of the things he said was he wants any organization that he coaches to admit their blame, admit why they've been bad, what their plan is to get better, how they're going to do it, Clearly the Bears did that. Clearly the Bears dropped their ego, they dropped everything, and they said, listen, we have not been a competent run organization for some time now. We have done this when we should have done this. We think this when really we should think this. We're zigging when everybody else is zagging. And that to me brings me a lot of confidence to know that the Bears maybe are finally ready to accept the fact that they are not doing things right. And it sounds so simple and it sounds so basic, but I think it's important to remember that a lot of these people, the McCaskies included, are billionaires. And they have a long lineage of NFL experience. Good experience, maybe not, but they've been running the Bears for a long time, right? Their relative, George House, is one of the absolute legends of the game of football. And so there can be a lot of ego there, to say that, we do know what we're doing. We can run the Bears. We're fine. We can make good decisions. And if you look at the Bears' history over the past 2 decades, the reality is that they cannot do that. They have not put the Bears in a good spot to succeed. And again, the fact that they're understanding that, they're accepting that, they're ready to make a change, to me is the best, one of the best parts about this whole ordeal. Okay, so Ben Johnson is going to come in. He is going to change the way that Bears run things, I think, from a philosophical perspective. Now, the one thing that Ben Johnson did in Detroit that I would love for him to bring over to Chicago, again, from a philosophical perspective, is he prioritized the offensive line, right? They gave a big contract to Frank Ragnow, Taylor Decker. They took Penei Sewell with a high pick. The Lions' offensive line has been incredible. They signed Kevin Zeitler in free agency. They had Jonah Jackson last year. Their offensive line has been incredible. And throughout my entire lifetime, I cannot say without lying that the Bears have had a good offensive line. I can't say it. I'd be lying to you, and I don't like lying. That's not very nice. Okay, the Bears have had a terrible offensive line, and as a result, that has had a trickle-down effect on their entire offense. Because when your offensive line is bad, it makes life harder for your quarterback, which then makes it harder to get the ball to your playmakers, which makes it harder to run the football. It just having a bad offensive line just sabotages anything you want to do on the offensive side of the football, and that's really the truth. Now, in Detroit, they built up that incredible offensive line that allowed their two running backs, David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, to thrive, right? David Montgomery is not a different player than he was in Chicago, right? He's the same player. He just looks way better in Detroit because he has actual lanes to run through, okay? He's got an offensive line that paves the way for him to gain yards. They have one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL. Jared Goff, like I said, when he left the Rams, people were throwing Jared Goff in the garbage. They thought this guy's a bum. He's trash. Jared Goof, right? And listen, he still has some goof in him, as we saw in the NFC divisional game. But Jared Goff put up MVP caliber numbers the last couple of years. He's a limited quarterback in the sense of he's not very mobile. He's not going to move around. He doesn't give you much with his legs. I will say he is a pretty accurate quarterback. That is the one thing he's got going for him. But with Caleb Williams, you have just an infinite amount more of playmaking ability. I mean, we saw last year, when he wasn't getting crushed by defensive linemen and he was making some of those guys miss, I mean, he was creating. He was special with his arm. He was a great athlete. So you combine that with a hopefully much better offensive line for the Bears, and you get a recipe, I think, for this team to look a lot better soon. Now, obviously, I mentioned Caleb Williams is the number one reason why Ben Johnson chose the Chicago Bears. If you're going to become a head coach, you need a quarterback. That's how a majority of head coaches flame out. They can't figure out the quarterback position. Good thing, Bears already figured out the quarterback position. For the first time in my life, I can confidently assert the Bears have a franchise quarterback. Okay, so that's number one. So you have your quarterback. Additionally, the Bears have a top 10 draft pick. They have they have 3 picks in the top 40, and they have about $66 million in effective cap space. I guarantee you a large portion of those resources are going to be building up the trenches, whether it's signing guys in free agency, whether it's taking a guy top 10 like a Kelvin Banks, like a Will Campbell, maybe in the top 40 like a Tyler Booker. A lot of those resources are going to be used on the offensive line. I am very, very confident that Ben Johnson is going to prioritize the offensive line. So that's number one. Number two, Ben Johnson has proven to be a pretty good evaluator of talent, right? People, a long time ago, in case you guys don't forget this, a long time ago, people really destroyed the Detroit Lions for their selection of Jahmyr Gibbs in the draft. Turns out he's a really, really good running back. He changes the game for them. He is a tremendous player, right? Jameson Williams, for all of his struggles throwing the football, has given that offense an element of burner, right? Just the deep threat down the field, just to stretch the defense and open up the zone coverage, right? So I am confident in his ability to evaluate talent. I'm confident in his ability to build up the offensive line. I'm confident in his ability to call plays that fit Caleb Williams' strength. They talked about it with Jared Goff where, hey, there were certain plays that Ben Johnson had in the playbook that Jared Goff didn't like, so they didn't run them. Jared Goff wasn't comfortable with them. They didn't run them. And I'm not saying that he needs to just listen to Caleb Williams and do whatever Caleb Williams says, but if Caleb Williams is saying, hey, I really like these plays, I'm not so comfortable running these plays, he's going to run the plays that Caleb Williams is comfortable with, because the more comfortable you are, the faster you can play, the less you have to think. And again, quarterbacks have to deal with so much. They have to deal with the protections, they have to deal with the audibles, they have to deal with blitzers, they have to deal with there's so much, mentally speaking, there is so much that quarterbacks have to deal with on a play-to-play basis. To make Caleb Williams' life easier and to allow him to do the things that he's most comfortable with, I think will be a huge reason why he is going to be successful next year and beyond, right? Additionally, with Ben Johnson, you have the trick plays. And I want one more thing. I said this on the show a few weeks ago when we played the Lions and they ran that trick play in Chicago where Jared Goff dropped the snap, picked it up, threw a touchdown to Sam Laporta. And I said he was flirting with the Bears. He was flirting with the Bears. He was at the end of the bar. He slid a drink over. That is exactly what he did. And I said it confidently then. And now I look like I'm absolutely correct because he was flirting with the Bears. And then the Bears flirted back, and now they're dating, and it's great. Good things like that don't really happen to the Bears. So like a lot of Bears fans, I think, are kind of struggling to grasp this whole situation, right? Ben Johnson, Tom Brady getting duped by the Bears of all teams, right? This is a great day to be a Bears fan. So Ben Johnson is going to bring in, I think, a version of the Detroit Lions offense that he brought. Obviously, he's bringing in from the Lions, right? I think the Bears are going to have a much better running game. I do think it's funny, though, that DeAndre Swift is our running back because he notoriously kind of really doesn't like DeAndre Swift, from what I remember. But maybe it'll work. There have been a lot of Bears fans that have been asking, or I guess theorizing, that the Bears could go ahead and take Heisman Trophy runner-up Ashton Genty with the number 10 overall pick. The logic is, hey, he took Jahmyr Gibbs a couple of years ago with the 12th overall pick. It was seen as a reach at the time. Now, nobody's questioning it because Jahmyr Gibbs is incredible. I would maybe push back on that a little bit, just because I think the Lions at that point already had their offensive line in place, and they built the O-line before they, drafted skill position players really, really highly. So I would think that he would still go offensive line at 10. But I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit if, one of our seconds or a third or a fourth, maybe they take a running back. I think this is a really good running back draft class. You got guys, we saw in the national championship game last night, you got Trayvon Henderson, Quinshon Jenkins, you've got Arizona State's Scadaboo, you've got a plethora of good players. You got the kid from Tennessee. There are running backs in this draft if you want another running back besides DeAndre Swift. So I'm confident that he'll build up the trenches. I'm confident that the running game will be better, and I'm confident that he will play to Caleb Williams' strength, which all of those things I just mentioned significantly help the development of Caleb Williams. Part of the reason the Bears have never had a franchise quarterback, partially because they took the wrong quarterback, but also because they just have not given their quarterback a chance, right? It's always been bad offensive line, bad running game, no receivers, right? I think the Bears had the skill position players. I think now they have the ability to build up the offensive line and to improve the running game, right? Last year, DeAndre Swift averaged like 2.6 yards per carry. It was dreadful, right? And they were down so early in games, and they couldn't run the ball. That was just like throw. Caleb Williams was getting crushed because the defensive ends were just pinning their ears back and going after him. So all of those things make me very, very optimistic for the development of Caleb Williams. Now, obviously, offensively is where I think he's going to really shine. But as we know, and as I've talked about on this show before, a head coach is only as good as the staff around him. If you are a successful head coach, you need to build a competent staff around you in order to balance out the team, right? You can't just be offense and just neglect the defense. You can't just be defense and neglect the offense like the Bears have always been. So I will say, hearing who the Bears' potential coordinator hires are brings me a lot of happiness. Now, I'm recording this on Tuesday morning at about 12:30. Nothing is confirmed yet, so I will, take this with a grain of salt. But it sounds like the Bears are going to be hiring former Saints head coach Dennis Allen to be their defensive coordinator. Now, a lot of people's initial reaction is, wow, that guy's trash, because he was a terrible head coach. And you know what? You're right. He was a terrible head coach. But you know who else was a terrible head coach? Steve Spagnuolo for the Kansas City Chiefs, their defensive coordinator. Last time I checked, he is one of the best defensive coordinators we have ever seen. Every time the Chiefs are in a big game, his defense makes a huge play in the fourth quarter. They get a sack, they punch out the football, they get an interception. He knows when to dial it up. He's a great play caller. Steve Spagnuolo is, for my money, the best defensive coordinator we've ever seen. Steve Spagnuolo was also a terrible head coach. I think people really need to understand the fact that being a coordinator and being a head coach are two very different things. You can be a great coordinator while being a terrible head coach. Like, those things, they're not a package deal, right? You can be one without being the other. With his time with the Raiders and the Saints, it did not go well. I'm not denying that at all. Terrible. However, as the Saints defensive coordinator before he was promoted when Sean Payton left, he was excellent. He was excellent in other spots as his defensive coordinator as well. Not only is he excellent, I think, as a defensive coordinator, but he's also experienced. And one of the negatives with a guy like Ben Johnson, and I'm not saying it's a huge negative, but again, he's inexperienced, right? He hasn't been a head coach before at any level. And with that, there's going to be some growing pains, of course. Dennis Allen should also help him with some of the responsibilities of being a head coach, right? There will be things that Ben Johnson has not done yet that he will need to do now as the Bears coach. And I think that Dennis Allen could assist him with that, as well as being a phenomenal defensive play caller. Now, for the special teams coach, it is said that we may be hiring Darren Rizzi, who was the current, I guess, Saints head coach. He was the interim coach after they fired Dennis Allen earlier this year. Now, Darren Rizzi is thought about in the league as one of the best special teams coordinators. Again, this guy was a head coach just a couple of weeks ago. Now he's going to be a special teams coordinator. It's very kind of reminiscent of when the Packers hired Rich Bisaccia a couple of years ago after he was the Raiders interim head coach. Again, I think that's a really good hire for the Bears. I think he's building out his staff with experienced guys who are specialists on their side of the football. And the other positive thing about a guy like Dennis Allen is, say Dennis Allen is, awesome as our defensive coordinator. Our defense is back to what it was in the prime Matt Eberflus days. That doesn't even sound right to say out loud. But say he's awesome as our defensive coordinator. We're a top 5 defense, which I think we have the players to do so. He's not going to leave to be a head coach. Like, he's had 2 head coaching jobs. They both went terribly. He will not be a head coach anytime in the near future, maybe ever. That's the sad reality of the NFL. Sometimes you only get one chance. And if you get 2 chances, you're probably not getting a third chance. So he, if he's our defensive coordinator, he's rock solid. I mean, we probably have him locked down for 5, 6, 7 years minimum, which is incredible. So I want to talk about, again, the coordinators. I want to talk about Ben Johnson. This is it's a momentous occasion for the Bears. There's really no other way to put this. Sometimes I think as Bears fans, and of course we do, we cope, right? We always talk about things a little bit better than they really are. We have hope for somebody that probably shouldn't, right? This, no sugarcoating. This is no cope. This is nothing. This is a tremendous hire for the Chicago Bears. He was number 1 on my list. Me and Justin, weeks ago when they fired Matt Eberflus, did a video talking about who we want as the head coach. My number 1 choice, starred, circled, underlined, was Ben Johnson. And the Bears did it. And this is the first time in my life I can remember the Bears having a head coaching job. I have a guy that not only I want, but every fan wants for any team. And the Bears go out and they get the big fish and they write the big check. They slide him a blank check. They say, all right, welcome to House Hall. And right before I went on, I saw the video of Ben Johnson walking into House Hall with his family. And he was quoted as saying, this is the place that we all wanted to be the whole time. And that just gives me so much hope when you talk about the young foundation of this team. Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, Jalen Johnson, good players. There's hope. There is hope in Chicago for the first time in a while. And there was hope last year. There was hope last year, but I think a lot of Bears fans kind of always thought we would be handicapped to some degree by Matt Eberflus. And to what degree, I don't even think we would have expected how bad that was. But I think we all kind of knew, hey, maybe there's a ceiling with Matt Eberflus as the head coach. I think the ceiling with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams, I mean, I don't want to say it, and I don't want to jinx it, but, maybe that game that's played in February, maybe that's the ceiling now for the Chicago Bears. And last point I'll make, because I know we want to go get some lunch, wink, wink. I think that the expectations for Ben Johnson and the Bears in year 1 is not to win the Super Bowl. It's not to have a deep playoff run, even though that's what the Commanders are doing, and people will say, well, you got to match the Commanders. Don't do that. Don't try to keep up with the Joneses. What Jayden Daniels and the Commanders are doing is historically special. Historically special. He is probably having the best rookie quarterback season we've ever seen. So don't compare him to Jayden Daniels. And I don't want to hear any of this, the Bears should have taken Jayden Daniels. No, stop that. Cut it out. The expectation for the Bears next season with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams is to make the playoffs. Absolutely. They should make the playoffs. They should win about 9 or 10 games. I'm not expecting 12-5, 13-4. No, I'm not expecting any of that. I'm expecting the Bears to play meaningful football in December and January. Now, if the Bears don't win a playoff game next year, if the Bears, maybe just miss out on the 7th seed or whatever, I'm not going to consider it a colossal failure. But the Bears need to be a competitive football team and be playing meaningful football late in the season next year. They need to be. And I think they will. And I'm confident that the Bears are only going to go up from here. I'm serious. Like I can't express my excitement enough. I've been talking for 30 minutes about Ben Johnson and how good he's going to be for the Chicago Bears. It's a new day in Chicago. It really, really is. And I've talked at great length about it, and now we got to see it. Now, we're going to be keeping a close eye on what he does in free agency. That's going to open up in a couple of months. What he's going to do in the draft in April, how he's going to run his program, in training camp and in the preseason and all the way leading up to, the regular season next year. So it's going to be a while to wait. We're going to have to wait about 8 to 9 months to see his team in action. But I'm very, very excited. I think a lot of fans are as well. And this is a huge, huge win for the Chicago Bears organization. No other way to put it. So, all right, I will let you guys go. I've been yapping for a little too long right now. Just a quick program update, by the way. I know you guys missed Justin. Justin will be coming back hopefully soon. We're going to do an episode together because the show is just not the same without Justin. You guys know that. So we're gonna have him on hopefully soon and get it going, get the duo back. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to keep up on all of our videos. We're going to be talking everything important regarding the Chicago Bears. We're going to be talking about the draft, free agency. We're going to be talking about camp. Hopefully, we will continue this as a weekly segment or a weekly show going into next year as well. But that'll do it for this episode, guys. Peace out.